What's up, everybody? Welcome to the Bengali food buffet in downtown Calcutta, India. If you want to see a real Indian buffet and a buck-wild Bengali food tour, then you've come to the right place. So I was strolling and patrolling around the mean streets of downtown Calcutta. This city was the capital of British India for about 140 years, so there's all kinds of old-timey architecture popping off. The city has an old rustic feel to it, and that's all fine and good, but I didn't come here for the rustic feels, baby. I came here for the rustic food. So I sprinted full speed to a famous restaurant called Six Ballygungs Place. Word on the streets is this is a mighty fine establishment to try out some authentic Bengali food, so I decided to give it a go. So I boosted on into the joint and I saw they had a buffet, which was a pretty good option for me, seeing as how I didn't know anything about Bengali food. This way, I could dive dick first into the unknown and try out a whole lot of exotic new delicacies that I probably wouldn't be able to try otherwise. So after shoveling a large quantity of food on my plate, I sat myself down and as you can see, I got myself a nice selection right there. I don't even know what most of the stuff is, but it's looking pretty delish and it's looking pretty unique compared to the other Indian food I've had. I mean, here we got some unidentifiable vegetables and some huge-ass chunks of meat. Forget about being in a new Indian state. Right about now, I actually feel like I'm in a new country or something. But enough with all that chatter, now it's time for some chow. So first up, I figured I'd try out some of these baby potatoes over here with my hand, I might add. That's right, baby, I had some utensil Nazis complaining on some of my previous videos. They were telling me I shouldn't use spoons or forks when I eat Indian food, I should only use my hands. Well, here I go, touching some hot slimy balls just to please some utensil Nazis. And I'll tell you, it did feel pretty weird, but overall those baby potatoes were tasting mighty fine. The buffet sign said this is called Aloo Dum. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly. But it tasted like a buttery tomato puree, chili powder explosion of starchy goodness all up in my mouth. Those are some pretty good spicy balls, if I do say so myself. And whoa, check this out, utensil Nazis. I'm actually eating the rice with my hands. How do you like them apples? Now theoretically, eating the Indian food with your hands is supposed to make it taste better, but I can't really tell the difference. I think it pretty much just tastes awesome whether I'm using a utensil or not. But anyway, there was still some potato gravy left over, and oh man, check that out, utensil Nazis. Here I just switched it up on you, and now I'm using my spoon. I'm keeping you on your toes today. Now maybe I can't mix the food together too well with the spoon, but I do think it is a little bit more efficient for jamming food down my throat. But hey, maybe I'm just a tad biased, baby. So next up, it's time to move on to this unidentifiable hunk of meat. And as you can see, I'm chopping through that hunk of meat with a utensil. Now the signage said this is Doi Pona, and it's kinda looking like some fish action, so I took myself a bite, and yep, I think it is fish. Wow, that fish is soft as hell, and it's in some kinda yogurt sauce of sorts. Apparently the sauce has got some turmeric, cardamom, and coriander in it, and a whole lot of other spices. I think I even detect some cinnamon in the mix. It's actually tasting pretty damn good. The only problem I'm having is I'm getting the occasional fish bone. I mean, how am I supposed to chow down in a ravenous frenzy if I'm worried about the occasional fish bone puncturing my esophagus? Nevertheless, decent fishy right there. So what else we got here? We got some pan-fried eggplant on deck, also known as Kumro Bharta. Now for a second there I was torn, should I use my fork or my hand? It's a classic conundrum. Well, I ended up going with a hand, and I turned that eggplant around, and as you can see, it's looking greasy to the max. I got no qualms nor complaints about that. I'm a pretty big fan of grease myself, so I took myself a bite and whoa. Aside from that grease explosion in my mouth, this was actually a pretty subtle eggplant. That skin was salted, but otherwise the rest of the eggplant was plain, so you could taste that pure, unadulterated eggplant action. Overall, that's a pretty swadished eggplant in my book. Now at this point I went back into the spoon mode and started mixing and matching all kinds of fixins together. I got that dal and rice, and then I got this random green concoction into the mix called Saag Bhaja. It's some kind of sautéed, chopped green vegetable of sorts, so I took a look at that wild mix and then I took myself a bite. And wow, that wild mix was surprisingly light, and that Saag Bhaja had an almost herbal taste. I thought the flavor was quite nice, but maybe it was just a psychological side effect from eating that mix by spoon. I mean, just look at how efficiently I can shovel that food down my throat via spoon. It's kinda hard not to like a spoon. Anyway, at this point I realized I had totally forgotten about these big deep-fried puffed bread things. The buffet signage said this thing is called a Luchi, and I think that's a pretty awesome name. So I pretty much have no idea what the hell I'm supposed to eat this with, but I figure I'll give this orange mash a try. This is some Kumro Bharta right here, whatever that is. So I ripped off some of that Luchi and put on some of that orange mash. Then I shoved it down my throat so fast I damn near broke the sound barrier. And oh my buck wild Bengal, that flavor combo was fucking incredible. That Luchi bread puff was tasting insanely soft and puffy, and that orange mash, it tasted like some mashed pumpkin with some lime juice and some chili powder action. Man oh man was that flavor combo swadished. So what other kind of foods we got here? According to the buffet signage, this is some fish Kabiraji. Well, they got the word fish on that signage, so I finally have some idea what I'm getting into. So I took myself a bite of that fishy and whoa, it's tasting pretty tender. It's a soft piece of breaded fishy with some ginger, garlic, and salt flavors going down. I guess there could be a slight mint flavor in the mix as well, but I'm not exactly sure. But at any rate, I had the sudden urge to use one of these lime slices over here. So I shot off some lime juice onto the top, and then I got ready to take myself yet another bite. And as soon as I bit down, I knew I had made the right choice. I had made a pivotal choice. Crazy as it may sound, that lime elevated that fishy, and truth be told, I was loving it to bits. So what's next over here? We got some kind of crazy ass pod-like vegetable. I ain't never seen a vegetable like that before. It's looking kinda wild, so I took myself a bite and whoa. The outside of the vegetable was soft, real soft, and the inside was kinda gooey like okra. But holy shit, those seeds were another story altogether. Those seeds were hollow as hell, and they were tasting crunchy on the outside somehow. So this vegetable was soft on the outside and crunchy on the inside. That's some weird, wild shit right there. I mean, don't get me wrong, the spice seasoning was good. It tasted like some turmeric, cumin, and coriander action, which was okay, but that vegetable itself was just way too weird for my liking. It tasted like I was eating some kind of radioactive alien egg or something. It wasn't exactly my style, let's just put it that way. So after I cleared off my first plate, I sprinted on over to the buffet zone and got myself a second plate. I refilled on some of my faves, including the potatoes and the pumpkin, and I also got some foods that I hadn't tried yet. For example, I got a green hunk of meat over here, I got a red sauce over there, and I got another piece of meat. And I must say, as a connoisseur of eating innocent animals, I'm pretty happy about the fact that this Bengali food has a lot of meat. So first up, I figured I'd try this red sauce, which was labeled as Khejur Amsatta Chutney. It kinda looks like there's some tomato and raisins in that chutney, but I don't know exactly. Anyway, I mixed it in with some pumpkin and rice, then I took myself a bite and whoa! I did not expect that, baby cakes. That was sweet as hell. It was like a thick, sticky tomato-infused glaze, and it was definitely sweet beyond belief. Just how sweet are we talking? I'd say it was pre-diabetes sweet. It was way different from any other chutney I've had in India, and if used in moderation, I'd say it's definitely a flavor enhancer. So next up, we got us a little hunk of meat here. A little something called Mangshor Jhol. And damn boy, look at that hand. This is what eating with your hands does to you. My hand's got about 100 grains of rice sticking to it, and it's looking more fucked up than a soup sandwich. Nevertheless, I savagely bit into that meat and was pleasantly surprised by how soft it was. Apparently it's some mutton marinated in some coriander, bay leaf, and a whole lot of other spices, although I couldn't really taste much. Basically that meat was soft and tender as hell, but kinda low on the flavor department in my humble opinion. Now the last item on this plate is a gigantic hunk of meat with a long as hell name. It's called Kachalonka Dhonepata Murgi. That's a buck wild name right there. Anyway, at first I thought I should rip off a piece of meat, but then I just decided to bite it off. And man, oh man, that was some incredibly soft chicken meat right there. It tasted like some coriander leaf paste and some garlic paste action, and personally, I was loving it. You might even say I was feeling a tad inspired to put that chicken inside the Luchi to be exact. And after I wrapped it up and took a bite, even I got to admit that was a decent flavor combo. So after I polished off that plate, I took one more visit to the buffet zone, just one more. They had 2 Bengali dessert items, and I figured I was worth it. So after shoveling that onto my plate, I sprinted on back to my seat, and wow, just wow, take a look at that. You can actually see those empty calories just glistening in the light. Instabeatus, here we come, sweetie buns. So the buffet signage said this thing is a Chanar Malpua. I'm not sure what the hell that is, but just cutting into it, I could see all kinds of sugary juice just shooting out that thing. I've only barely touched it, but I already feel my blood sugar spiking. Is that even possible? I think it is. So I took myself a bite and oh my stray dogs. That thing was a liquid sugar-packed explosion that was sweeter than I could ever imagine. Apparently this thing is supposed to be a deep-fried pancake of Indian cheese, sugar, and milk, and holy Hanuman. I guess there's a hint of cardamom in there as well, but to me it just tastes like one buck-wild diabetic spiked explosion. So let's move on to this Mishti Doi action. I took myself a scoop, half expecting a break from that previous sugar explosion, but apparently I was wrong. Apparently I was real wrong. This thing is made from milk, yogurt, and jaggery is kinda like sugar in a less processed form. Basically it has a kind of brown sugary flavor and it's sweet as hell. So although both of these desserts tasted extremely good to me, they were just a hair too sweet for my liking. However, overall, I gotta say this Bengali buffet was an incredible taste testing experience that I won't soon forget. Oh, and by the way, if you want to see even more life-enhancing Indian food tours, then you best be checking out my other videos. I've got a video on the best lassis in Varanasi, and I've got a video about the best food in Goa, just to name a few. I've got those links in the description box. And as always, thanks for watching this video. Why don't you leave a comment, let me know what you think.